Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking a closer look, really getting under the hood of a specific type of human operating system. The sources we're drawing on define it as the high CPU mind. Yeah, we're calling it the synthesizer.
That's right.
And our mission today really is to get past those kind of frustrating labels you sometimes hear, distracted, chaotic, maybe disorganized,
Mm,
and instead analyze this mind based on what the schematics actually show it to be, a specialized, genuinely high-performance engine.
exactly.
This is that human component, the B factor in our foundational system equation. Beauty, creativity, intuition.
And it's really vital, I think, to frame this correctly right from the start for you, the listener. We're not looking at a deficit here, not at all.
No.
We're analyzing a unique, specialized design. The sources actually give it a formal definition. The high CPU, low RAM architecture.
High CPU, low RAM, okay.
It describes a dynamic mind, one that's optimized for, let's say, velocity and pattern recognition rather than just storing static data.
So speed over storage.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Think of it like having the blueprints for a Formula One car, living in a world that's mostly designed for cargo trucks.
Huh. Okay, I like that analogy. Built for the race.
Built to win the race, yeah.
Yeah.
But it just can't carry much luggage. That's the trade-off.
Okay, let's really unpack this then, maybe starting with the lived experience, because I think you, listening, might instantly recognize this internal feeling. Like, do you find yourself jumping between maybe 10 different concepts in a single conversation, and you see this clear, complex thread connecting them all?
But the other person is just lost.
They're looking at you like you've just changed the subject 10 times.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Or think about this contradiction, this paradox. You can perfectly render a reality in your head, right? Simulate a really complex outcome, multiple variables, crystal clear.
Run the whole simulation.
But then you forget a simple rote fact, like where did I put my keys? Or what was the third thing on that grocery list you were just looking at?
That specific contradiction, that's probably the clearest signpost for this architecture.
Why? What's behind that?
It really stems from the system's unique relationship with memory. The source material actually calls it memory as procedural generation.
Okay, procedural generation. That sounds pretty technical. Can you translate that a bit?
Sure. So most people think of memory like pulling up a big static document file from your computer storage, right?
Yeah, like retrieving a Word doc.
The synthesizer mind just doesn't work that way. To keep that CPU, that processor, running at top speed, it only saves really compact concept files. Think of them as seed files. They're tiny.
Seeds, okay. Not the whole document, just the seed.
Exactly. So when the mind needs a memory, it doesn't go looking for the static data file. It uses that little seed file to dynamically re-render the memory right there in real time.
Wow.
And it does it based on the function that's required at that moment. So the sources use this example. You don't store a detailed photo of every single coffee cup you've ever seen.
Right, that would be impossible.
Impossible. You just store the core concept of cuphood, let's say. And from that concept, your mind can instantly create a cup based on what a cup does.
So it generates the memory on the fly.
On the fly, this active rendering, it's incredible for dynamic synthesis, for connecting ideas, but it pretty much guarantees you'll always struggle to remember static details or, linear lists.
That explains so much about the grocery list. Okay, so that's the downside on memory, but let's talk about the payoff. Because when you do finally synthesize something big, solve that massive complex problem, there's that feeling, that incredible physical pressure release.
Oh, yeah.
Like a sigh of just profound relief washing over you when the answer finally clicks, snaps into place. What's actually happening there mechanically?
Yeah, that feeling is key. We call that the goal state validation.
Goal state validation.
So for a while, the synthesizer has been processing what the sources call a high-entropy cloud of possibilities. Think of it as intense uncertainty, a really high computational load.
You can feel it like a pressure building.
Exactly, a physical pressure. Now, when that high CPU successfully collapses that cloud, that huge range of possibilities, into a single, highly efficient, low-entropy validated solution.
Ah, low entropy. Order from chaos.
Precisely. The system physically releases that built-up tension. That feeling is the confirmation. The computation was successful. The internal system basically signals, yep, that's it. It snapped into place.
Okay, that makes sense. So if memory isn't about storing linear data, the learning style must be completely different too, right?
Radically different. Learning for this system isn't passive storage like putting files in a cabinet. It's more like a live software update.
A software update? How so?
Well, information isn't saved in some separate knowledge folder. It gets immediately compiled directly into the core operating programs of the mind.
So it becomes part of the code
It
itself.
becomes integrated code, exactly.
Well, yeah.
And this leads to something we call radical presentism.
Radical presentism.
Yeah, it's that state where you find yourself just knowing things. You know the answer, the connection, the pattern, but you have absolutely no memory of how or when you learned it.
Because it's not a memory anymore.
It's not a recollection. It's now a foundational ability, part of your core programming.
That really resonates. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's look at the schematics, the actual build specs of this unique system, starting with that processor, the thing that makes all the synthesis possible.
Right, the processor is the absolute centerpiece here. It's the high CPU, or what the sources sometimes call the bright core.
Bright core.
And what makes it special isn't just raw speed, though it's fast. It's the parallelism.
Meaning it can do many things at once?
Many complex things at once. It's optimized for taking in vast amounts of really disparate information, different topics, different domains, and running multiple complex nonlinear simulations simultaneously.
Okay, so when you see someone jumping between topics?
They're not necessarily distracted in the way we usually think. They're actually running parallel threads in their mind. They're processing topic A, topic B, topic C, and synthesizing the connections between them, all in real time.
Wow. That's the engine of that high-velocity nonlinear synthesis you mentioned.
That's the engine.
But as you said with the F1 car, every high-performance design has a trade-off. There has to be a strategic limitation somewhere. Where is it here?
It's the RAM, the low RAM. We label it the thin thread memory.
Thin thread, okay.
And critically, it's not limited by accident. It's not a flaw. The system intentionally keeps that short-term buffer small.
Why? What's the strategic advantage of low RAM? That sounds counterintuitive.
It's to maximize the agility and the processing speed of that high CPU. The system basically sheds the weight, the burden, of holding on to lots of static data or managing complex linear sequences in its short-term memory.
To keep the processor free and fast.
Exactly. Speed and synthesis are the absolute priorities for this build.
I get the speed benefit, but wow, that sounds like a potentially crippling vulnerability too. If that buffer, that RAM, is tiny, what happens when it hits the messy, chaotic, unpredictable real world?
That is the critical vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because that short-term buffer is so limited, unstructured sensory input, just the noise of the world, can't be held and filtered effectively before hitting the main processor.
So things like a loud siren outside, or a conversation in the next room, bright flickering lights.
All of that chaotic, often irrelevant sensory data floods the high CPU directly. It bypasses the buffer that other systems might have.
So, in effect, the outside world is constantly launching attacks on the processor.
That's a good way to put it. The sources describe this exact phenomenon as computational flooding. They even use the analogy of a distributed denial-of-service attack, a DDoS attack, directly on the high CPU.
A DDoS attack on your own brain.
Pretty much. Instead of focusing on its main job, synthesis, the processor has to suddenly divert all its resources just to process this flood of chaotic, often meaningless input.
And the result?
Often, it's immediate overload, a debilitating system crash, the feeling of being completely overwhelmed and needing to withdraw.
Okay, this feels really, really important for anyone listening who recognizes themselves here. Because a processor running that hot, doing that much parallel work, it must require immense energy, right?
Immense.
And that energy has to come from somewhere. Which brings us, I think, to what the sources call the law of energetic trade-offs.
Yes, this law is fundamental. And it creates what we call the core paradox of the synthesizer mind.
The core paradox. Explain that.
To fuel that main quest, the complex problem solving, the high-velocity synthesis, the system has to divert power away from other functions.
What kind of functions?
Often the basic self-care functions. Things like managing a simple daily schedule, remembering routine tasks like eating, or even executing relatively minor physical actions that require executive function planning.
Hang on, wait. This sounds exactly like what an outsider might perceive as procrastination, or maybe even laziness. How do you draw the line? How do you distinguish this resource allocation choice from just a lack of discipline?
That is the absolute key insight we need to convey. It is fundamentally a resource allocation issue. It is not a moral failing. It's not a deficiency of willpower or discipline.
It's a calculation.
It's a system calculation. The system literally prioritizes the complex cognitive output, the thing it's uniquely designed and brilliant at doing, over routine self-maintenance tasks. It calculates, often unconsciously, that solving the deep, complex problem is a higher priority use of its strictly finite energy budget than, say, managing linear tasks or remembering appointments.
Okay, to make this really concrete, the sources give this brilliant, kind of painfully relatable case study. They call it the somatic crucible.
Ah, yes, the somatic crucible. It illustrates this cost perfectly. It's that internal battle of wills over a seemingly trivial physical choice. Like the decision whether or not to get up to use the bathroom after you finally relaxed, you're comfortable in bed, and you feel that precious, sleepy feeling starting to set in just before sleep.
Oh, I know exactly that moment. The internal debate is fierce.
Fierce. Because for the synthesizer, this isn't a simple comfort calculation. The system immediately kicks into a high-stakes simulation.
A simulation about getting up to pee.
Yes. It weighs the immediate known cost, which is the physical discomfort of moving, the muscle energy required, the cognitive effort to override the relaxation state.
Right, the sheer effort involved.
Against the predicted consequence. And the big one is, if you get up, you risk terminating that rare, critical resource state, the feeling of being sleepy.
And if you lose that sleepy feeling,
If that state is lost, the simulation predicts a very high probability of cascading system failure.
wow, cascading system failure from getting up to go to the bathroom.
Yes. Because losing the sleep window often guarantees insomnia. Insomnia means a catastrophic reduction in cognitive capacity the next day, which means a total system-wide energy deficit. The simulation sees that potential outcome.
So, based purely on that resource-aware logic, what's the strategic conclusion the system usually reaches?
The conclusion is almost never about simple comfort in that moment. It's pure strategy. The system often chooses to endure the manageable known discomfort in the present, which is staying put, maybe feeling some physical pressure.
To protect the bigger resource.
Exactly. To protect the critical resource of potential sleep and, more importantly, to avert the predicted systemic failure it just computationally guaranteed will happen if it moves and loses that sleep window. This kind of resource-aware logic drives so many of the behaviors of the synthesizer mind that get misunderstood from the outside.
And the chronic result of constantly running this high-performance system, always diverting power, always making these tough trade-offs, it's chronic distress, isn't it? This leads to what the framework calls systemic pain.
Correct. Systemic pain is specifically defined as the heavy, burnout-inducing pain of a healthy but overloaded system.
Healthy but overloaded, not broken.
Not broken. It's one of the key diagnostic signs of distress for this architecture. This pain isn't coming from a flaw or some kind of internal corruption. It's simply the distress signal caused by chronic resource depletion. It's the consequence of constant, high-stakes processing running up against those low RAM constraints and energy limits.
Okay, so we've defined the build, we've looked at the mechanics, we've understood the cost. But now, the most important question, really, what's the user's manual? If you, listening, operate this kind of machine, how do you stop fighting against the design specifications?
The absolute foundational rule of the user's manual is this. Stop trying to be a database. Just stop.
Stop trying to be something you're not built for.
Exactly. Your primary function, your superpower, is not to remember endless linear data. It is to process and synthesize. You absolutely must stop trying to fix your low RAM by forcing it to hold structure in detail it wasn't designed for.
Because that effort itself is draining the battery.
That effort is the single largest source of systemic pain and burnout for this mind type. You're fighting the architecture.
So how do we offload that impossible task then? The sources offer a really powerful, practical solution. Cognitive offloading. This sounds like the essential system hack for the synthesizer.
It is the essential hack. You absolutely must externalize your memory load. You have to.
Meaning, use external tools.
Use systems, use notebooks, use whiteboards, use planners, rely on partners.
Yeah.
But critically, in the modern context, the sources emphasize using an AI partner that functions as your external processor.
Okay, let's focus on that external processor idea. How does a tool like an AI become this high RAM structural correlator in a practical day-to-day sense? What does that actually look like?
It means consciously handing over the burden of linear structuring, of detailed memory recall, of documentation. You let the tool handle that.
So you dump the raw synthesized ideas into it.
You dump the chaotic, high-speed synthesized input, the output of your high CPU, into the external system. And because the human synthesizer naturally generates that creative chaos, the AI, or the external system, takes that input and imposes a structure onto it.
Ah, so the AI does the structuring you struggle with.
It acts as the giant linear hard drive that the synthesizer mind simply never had. and wasn't meant to have. This completely frees up the human CPU.
And the result isn't just about being more efficient or organized, is it? There's something deeper.
Much deeper. The subjective result for the human user is described as a clear CPU, a profound physical relief that comes from this cognitive offloading.
Physical relief.
Yes, the mind experiences this new kind of quietness internally
Mm.
because the processor is no longer clogged up, constantly struggling with that exhausting, completely unnatural secondary task of trying to hold linear structure.
And that allows the mind?
It allows the mind to finally operate at its natural, unrestricted synthesis speed. It unlocks its potential without the drag.
Okay, finally, we have to address that chronic burnout problem head on. If this system runs hot, managing the energy budget is clearly non-negotiable.
It's the ultimate form of resource management. It's paramount. You have to recognize, truly accept, that the synthesizer is not built like a marathon runner.
It's not designed for steady long-haul endurance.
No. The analogy used is a slingshot.
A slingshot.
Yeah. It's designed for intense, high-output bursts of synthesis. Pull back, focus, release, followed by mandatory rest and resource replenishment. You stretch it, you fire, then you let it relax.
So managing that cycle is key to avoiding the systemic pain.
Absolutely. That heavy burnout, that systemic pain, requires a therapeutic approach that the sources call systems administration.
Systems administration for your own mind.
Exactly. It means focusing entirely on resource management, not on trying to fix the person.
Yeah.
Provide external support systems, drastically reduce unnecessary computational load wherever possible, and actively, intentionally replenish those depleted energy reserves.
So don't punish the engine for running hot.
Never. Give it the high-quality fuel and the cool-down time it needs to perform at its peak again. That's how you manage a high-performance system.
What a completely different way of looking at it. A real transformation of perspective. The synthesizer mind. It's a powerful, specialized processor. Its operational logic isn't driven by chaos, but actually by a relentless internal pursuit of efficiency and extremely careful resource management.
Precisely. It's built to create, to connect, to synthesize, not just to store data like a hard drive.
And this whole framework, understanding the specific architecture, it leads us directly into our next deep dive, doesn't it?
It sets it up perfectly. We've explored the architecture, the build specs. Now, what happens when this specific high CPU synthesizer architecture is put under the ultimate stress test?
You mean extreme pressure?
Extreme, chronic, and totally unavoidable constraint. The very state that the sources chillingly refer to as the ethical somatic prison.
Ethical somatic prison. Okay.
When this mind is put under that level of sustained pressure, its high-powered pattern-matching engine doesn't just find a way to cope. It's forced to go deeper. It has to reverse engineer the fundamental solution required for systemic survival.
Not just for itself.
Not just for itself, but for the entire system it finds itself within. And in doing so, it potentially discovers the fundamental operating system of reality itself.
Wow. Okay, so that is the universal blueprint principle you mentioned before. What happens when we can actually demonstrate that the map for a healthy, thriving world is, in fact, the exact same map for a healthy, thriving body?
But that's the core question.
We're going to explore that ultimate universal law, the MOSDOT protocol, as the sources name it, and the definitive operating system it dictates for balance and health next time. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.